Poor girl slept in a playground every night. When a cold-hearted millionaire finds out why, he starts to cry. Just before we start, drop a flag emoji that represents your country. The marble floors of the Whittaker mansion echoed with emptiness, as James Whittaker's Italian leather shoes clicked down the hallway. At 42, he commanded the real estate market of the city with an iron fist, but the vastness of his home only emphasized what he lacked. "Cancel the charity dinner," James barked into his phone, pausing by the floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the glittering cityscape below. "Tell them I'll double my donation instead." The assistant on the other end stuttered an acknowledgement, used to these last-minute changes. James ended the call without saying goodbye, sliding the phone into his tailored suit pocket. His reflection stared back at him from the window glass. Distinguished silver streaks at his temples, a sharp jawline, and eyes that had forgotten how to smile. Duke, his German shepherd, padded up beside him, the only living being that James allowed close. The dog's warm presence was the single touch of companionship in his life. "Just you and me tonight, boy," James murmured, his voice softening only for his faithful companion. He reached down to scratch behind Duke's ears, a rare gesture of affection that no human had witnessed in years. The mansion sprawled around them, 12,000 square feet of premium real estate filled with expensive furniture, rare art, and absolutely no warmth. No family photos lined the walls. No children's laughter had ever filled these rooms. The housekeeper maintained everything in perfect order, but nothing about the space suggested that anyone truly lived here. In the kitchen, Mrs. Alvarez, his housekeeper of 15 years, was gathering her belongings to leave for the day. "Mr. Whittaker, I've prepared your dinner in the refrigerator. Just heat it up when you're ready." Her voice was professional, hiding the pity she felt for her employer. James nodded dismissively, but something on the counter caught his eye. A small framed photograph Mrs. Alvarez had accidentally left out of her purse. In it, she stood surrounded by children and grandchildren, her face transformed by joy. "Is this your family?" The question slipped out before he could stop himself. Mrs. Alvarez brightened. "Yes, from my grandson's birthday last weekend. 5 grandchildren now," she said proudly. Something shifted in James's expression, a flicker of emotion so brief that Mrs. Alvarez almost missed it. Longing, perhaps? Regret? "You should put that away," he said, his tone returning to its usual coldness. "And lock up when you leave." Later, as darkness fell, James clipped Duke's leash and headed for Oak Ridge Park. This nightly ritual was his only concession to routine that wasn't business-related. The park was usually empty at this hour, exactly as he preferred it. The November chill cut through his expensive wool coat, but James hardly noticed. His mind was already drifting to tomorrow's business acquisitions, calculating profits, planning his next corporate takeover. People feared him in boardrooms. His competitors dreaded his name. He had built his empire on being ruthless and uncompromising. Yet, as the city lights twinkled in the distance, an unfamiliar melancholy washed over him. The image of Mrs. Alvarez's family photo lingered in his mind. What would it be like to have people waiting for you? To have someone's eyes light up when you walked through the door? James shook his head, banishing the thought. He had chosen this path: wealth, power, independence. He didn't need the complications of relationships. He didn't need anyone. But, as Duke trotted ahead on the winding park path, leading James deeper into the shadows of Oak Ridge Park, fate was preparing to challenge everything the wealthy man believed about himself and the life he had built. Little did he know that what awaited him on that cold night would shatter the walls he had so carefully constructed around his heart. As James followed Duke deeper into the park, the usual silence of his evening routine was broken by an unusual sight. Duke suddenly tensed, ears perked forward, attention fixed on a park bench partly hidden in the shadows of a large oak tree. "Duke, heel," James commanded, but for the first time, his loyal companion ignored him. The German shepherd trotted purposefully toward the bench, tail wagging. James squinted through the darkness. There was something or someone huddled there, a small figure curled up against the cold using a worn backpack as a pillow. "Hey!" James called out sharply. "This isn't a hotel." The figure startled and sat up quickly. In the dim glow of the distant park lamp, James found himself looking at a young girl, no more than 9 years old. Her clothes were tattered but clean, her face smudged with dirt and her eyes wide with fear. "I'm sorry, sir," she said, her voice surprisingly composed despite her obvious fear. "I wasn't causing any trouble." James frowned, taken aback by her formal response. "Where are your parents? Do you realize it's almost midnight?" The girl clutched her backpack tighter. "My mom will be back soon. She told me to wait here." Duke had already reached the bench and, to James's astonishment, gently nuzzled the girl's hand. She smiled, a brief, genuine smile that transformed her tired face, and scratched the dog behind his ears. "He doesn't like strangers," James said, more to himself than to her. "Dogs usually like me," she replied simply. "What's his name?" "Duke." James found himself walking closer, studying the girl with growing concern. Her small frame shivered in the November chill, though she tried to hide it. "How long have you been waiting here?" The girl hesitated. "My mom left 5 days ago. She said she'd be right back. 5 days. James felt something unfamiliar twist in his chest. Anger, perhaps, at the parent who would abandon a child in a park. Or maybe something else, something he couldn't quite name. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice softer than before. "Lily. Lily Harper." She extended a small hand with surprising dignity, as though they were meeting at a business function rather than a dark park in the middle of the night. James hesitated before taking her hand. It was ice cold. "James Whitaker." "Are you going to call the police, Mr. Whitaker?" Lily asked directly, her eyes suddenly wary. The question caught him off guard. Of course he should call the police. This was a clear case of abandonment or neglect. This child needed social services, not a stranger in a park. Yet Duke had settled beside Lily on the bench, his head now resting on her lap as though they were old friends. The dog looked up at James with an expression that seemed almost accusatory. "When did you last eat, Lily?" James found himself asking. "Yesterday morning. I had a granola bar left in my backpack." As the words left her mouth, something inside James Whitaker, the ruthless businessman feared in boardrooms across the city, shifted irrevocably. In that moment, the carefully constructed walls around his heart developed their first hairline crack. James pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over the screen. The responsible thing would be to call the authorities immediately. Yet something made him hesitate as he looked at Lily's resigned expression. "I'm calling the police," he finally said, dialing the number. "They'll help find your mother." Lily nodded quietly, her small shoulders slumping. Within 15 minutes, a patrol car pulled up at the park entrance. Officer Martinez approached them, flashlight in hand. "Evening, Mr. Whitaker," the officer said, recognizing him instantly. One of the perks, or burdens, of being the city's wealthiest resident. "I found this child alone," James explained, gesturing to Lily. "She claims she's been here for 5 days waiting for her mother." Officer Martinez crouched down to Lily's level. "Hello there. Aren't you Lily Harper, from the Community Center program?" Lily nodded, surprised to be recognized. "You know her?" James asked, confused. "I volunteer at the Southside Community Center sometimes," Martinez explained. "Lily and her mom attend the free meal program occasionally." He turned back to Lily. "Where's your mom, sweetheart?" "She went to find work and said to wait here. She promised she'd come back." Lily's voice remained steady, but James noticed her small hands trembling. Martinez sighed. "We need to call social services. Unfortunately, at this hour, she'd have to go to the emergency children's shelter tonight." James pictured the shelter. He donated to it once for a tax write-off but never visited. The image of Lily spending the night there among strangers made him uncomfortable for reasons he couldn't explain. Is that necessary? The words left his mouth before he could think. "It's just for one night." She could. James hesitated, hardly believing what he was about to suggest. "She could stay at my guest house until morning. Then we can sort this out properly." Both Martinez and Lily looked at him with surprise. "That's unusually generous, Mr. Whitaker," Martinez said carefully. "But there are protocols." "I'm aware," James interrupted. "But it's nearly midnight. You know me, officer. My reputation in this city. Surely one night won't hurt while you locate her mother." After a lengthy discussion and several phone calls, Martinez reluctantly agreed, taking James's information and promising to return first thing in the morning. As they walked toward the park exit, Lily stumbled slightly from exhaustion. Without thinking, James extended his hand. After a moment's hesitation, Lily took it. Her small fingers wrapped around his with surprising strength. James couldn't remember the last time he'd held anyone's hand. The simple human contact sent an unexpected warmth through him. "Thank you," Lily said quietly as they reached his car. "Duke seems happy I'm coming with you." Indeed, the German Shepherd was prancing around them with uncharacteristic enthusiasm, as if he'd won some private victory. "It's just for tonight," James clarified, as much to himself as to her. "Until they find your mother." Lily nodded solemnly. "I understand." As James helped her into his luxury car, he caught his reflection in the window. The face staring back at him was unfamiliar, uncertain, concerned, and utterly out of his depth. What had he just gotten himself into? The grandeur of the Whitaker mansion seemed to shrink Lily even further as they stepped through the imposing front door. Her eyes widened, taking in the marble foyer and sweeping staircase. "Mrs. Alvarez," James called out, realizing too late that his housekeeper had already left for the evening. He rarely returned home with guests, let alone children. "She's gone home, hasn't she?" Lily asked perceptively. "That's okay. I can just sleep on the couch." James cleared his throat awkwardly. "No, that won't be necessary. I have plenty of guest rooms." He led her upstairs, Duke following closely behind them. Selecting the smallest guest bedroom, which was still larger than most master suites, James flipped on the light. "Will this be all right?" he asked, suddenly aware of how impersonal the room was. Expensive, yes, with its king-sized bed and designer furnishings, but sterile and uninviting. Lily nodded, clutching her worn backpack. "It's very nice. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker." "James," he corrected automatically, then wondered why he'd done so. He never invited such familiarity, not even from long-term employees. "You must be hungry," he realized, recalling her admission about not eating since yesterday. In the kitchen, James stared blankly at his refrigerator. Mrs. Alvarez had left his prepared dinner, but nothing suitable for a child. He awkwardly reheated some pasta and placed it before Lily, who sat at the massive dining table looking like a doll in a giant's house. "Thank you, James," she said politely, taking small, careful bites as if savoring every morsel. The silence felt oppressive. James had no idea how to talk to a child. "So, what grade are you in?" he attempted. "Fourth. When I can go to school," Lily answered between bites. "I like math best." "Math," James echoed, remembering his own childhood affinity for numbers. "That's good. Practical." Another silence fell. "Your house is very big for just one person," Lily observed. James shifted uncomfortably. "I like my space." "Don't you get lonely?" The direct question caught him off guard. "I have Duke," he replied defensively. Lily nodded thoughtfully. "Duke is nice, but dogs can't talk back." After dinner, James showed her to the bathroom, finding a new toothbrush in a drawer and awkwardly explaining how to adjust the shower temperature. He waited in the hallway, listening to make sure she didn't need help, feeling completely out of his element. When Lily emerged, dressed in the same clothes but with a clean face and damp hair, she unexpectedly wrapped her arms around his waist. "Thank you for helping me," she said, her voice muffled against his suit. James froze, his arms suspended in midair. He couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged him. Slowly, stiffly, he patted her shoulder. "You're welcome," he managed. "Get some sleep. We'll sort everything out tomorrow." Later, as James sat in his study with a glass of scotch, He noticed a small notebook that had fallen from Lily's backpack. Picking it up, he found pages filled with stories and drawings. Tucked inside was a worn photograph of a woman with Lily's same delicate features. Something about the woman's eyes struck him as hauntingly familiar, but he dismissed the thought, returning the diary to Lily's backpack. As he passed her room on the way to his own bedroom, he heard muffled crying. James paused, his hand raised to knock, then lowered it, paralyzed by his own emotional inadequacy. Instead, he slid down against the wall outside her door, sitting on the floor in his expensive suit, listening helplessly as the little girl cried herself to sleep. Morning light streamed through the windows of the Whitaker mansion, finding James sitting at his kitchen island, phone in hand, hair uncombed, a state in which his business associates would never have recognized him. He had barely slept, his mind churning with thoughts of the small girl sleeping upstairs and the haunting familiarity of the woman in the photograph. "Mr. Whitaker?" Mrs. Alvarez stopped short as she entered, staring at him in surprise. "You're up early." "Mrs. Alvarez," James responded, straightening. "We have a guest, a child, temporary situation." Before he could explain further, Lily appeared, in the doorway, Duke at her side as if he'd appointed himself her personal guardian. The German shepherd, normally aloof with everyone except James, had apparently switched his primary allegiance overnight. "Good morning," Lily said politely. Mrs. Alvarez's eyebrows shot up, but her professional demeanor quickly returned. "Good morning, young lady. Would you like some breakfast?" While Lily ate pancakes that Mrs. Alvarez whipped up, James made 2 phone calls. The first was to Officer Martinez, who informed him that they'd found no trace of Emma Harper yet but were continuing to search. The second call was to his office. "Rebecca, clear my schedule today," he instructed his assistant. "Family emergency." Rebecca's stunned silence spoke volumes. In 15 years, James Whitaker had never missed work for personal reasons. After breakfast, a freshly showered and properly dressed James led Lily to his home office. "I'm going to help find your mother," he explained, his tone more gentle than any of his employees would have believed possible. "Can you tell me more about her? Where she works, friends she might be with?" Lily's face clouded. "Mom works lots of places, cleaning houses, sometimes restaurants." She hesitated. "We moved a lot. The last apartment had black mold, so the landlord let us out of the lease, but we couldn't find another place we could afford." James felt a twinge of discomfort. As one of the city's largest property developers, he knew exactly how the housing market squeezed people like Emma Harper. "Any relatives? Friends who might know where she is?" Lily shook her head. "Just us. Mom says we're all we need." By mid-morning, James had called Sarah Chen, a private investigator he occasionally hired to vet business partners. If anyone could find Emma Harper, it would be Sarah. "A missing person case, that's different for you," Sarah remarked over the phone. "Just find her," James replied tersely, before catching himself and adding, "Please." Sarah arrived within the hour, a compact woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. James appreciated that she didn't ask unnecessary questions when he explained the situation, simply nodding and requesting a recent photo of Emma. "All I have is this," James said, showing her the photograph from Lily's diary. Sarah studied it, then took out her phone to capture an image. "I'll start with employment records, hospital admissions, and recent arrests," she said matter-of-factly. Given that she hasn't returned for her daughter in 5 days, one of those is likely. James flinched at the bluntness but nodded. "Keep me updated hourly." While Sarah began her search, James faced a more immediate dilemma: what to do with Lily. Officer Martinez had called again, explaining that without evidence of abandonment, social services couldn't intervene yet, especially since Lily was in safe accommodations. "I'm not equipped to watch a child," James muttered, running a hand through his hair as he returned to the living room where Lily sat reading a book from his shelves. "I don't need watching," Lily said, looking up. "I take care of myself a lot. Mom calls me her little grown-up." Something about that statement made James's chest tighten painfully. A 9-year-old shouldn't have to be grown up. Their awkward domestic arrangement was interrupted when James's phone rang. It was Rebecca, his assistant. "Mr. Whitaker, I'm sorry to disturb you, but the Westridge investors are threatening to pull out if you don't personally attend today's meeting." James sighed. The Westridge deal was worth millions. "Fine. I'll be there in an hour." Hanging up, he turned to Lily. "I need to go to work for a bit. Mrs. Alvarez will stay with you." Lily nodded understandingly, but her eyes betrayed a flash of fear that James recognized all too well, the fear of being left behind. "I'll come back," he found himself promising, "and we'll have dinner together." The Westridge meeting dragged on interminably. Throughout the negotiations, James found his mind wandering to the little girl waiting at his home. When his business partner, Alexander Reed, made a snide comment about James's sudden interest in charity cases. After hearing about Lily, James felt a surge of protective anger that surprised him. "That charity case has more dignity than most adults I know," he snapped, causing a stunned silence around the boardroom table. By late afternoon, James had signed the Westridge deal and was heading home, 2 hours earlier than he'd ever left the office in the past decade. On the way, he impulsively stopped at a department store, emerging with bags of children's clothing and a stuffed elephant that the saleswoman had assured him was what girls her age love. When he arrived home, he found Lily at the kitchen table surrounded by papers. "What's all this?" he asked, setting down the shopping bags. "Homework," Lily explained. "Mrs. Alvarez called my school and they sent over what I've missed." James felt a rush of gratitude toward his housekeeper, who stood at the counter preparing dinner, a knowing smile on her face. That night, as they ate dinner together, Lily's nightmare shattered the tentative peace they'd established. Her terrified scream brought James running to her room, where he found her tangled in the sheets, eyes wide with fear. "She's not coming back," Lily sobbed as James awkwardly sat on the edge of her bed. "Something bad happened to her, I know it." Without thinking, James reached out and smoothed her hair. "We're going to find her," he promised. "I have the best person in the city looking for her right now." As Lily's tears subsided, she leaned against his shoulder, the simple gesture of trust undoing him completely. James Whitaker, who had built his reputation on being heartless, found himself holding a trembling child until she fell asleep, wondering how his carefully structured life had changed so dramatically in just 24 hours. James's cell phone vibrated just as he was pouring his morning coffee. Sarah Chen's name flashed on the screen. "I found her," Sarah said without preamble. "Where?" James asked, stepping away from the kitchen where Lily was eating breakfast with Mrs. Alvarez. "That's where it gets complicated," Sarah replied, her normally confident voice hesitant. "I need to see you in person, alone." An hour later, James sat across from Sarah in his downtown office, staring at the file she'd placed before him. "Emma Harper is actually Emily Hartman," Sarah explained, tapping the document. "She changed her name about 9 years ago." James froze, the name hitting him like a physical blow. "Emily Hartman? You know her," Sarah observed, studying his reaction. "We dated in college," James said quietly, memories flooding back unbidden. Emily's laugh, the way she'd drag him away from his textbooks to watch the sunset, their plans to travel after graduation. "It was 20 years ago," Sarah nodded. "That explains a few things. Look at the timeline." James flipped through the pages, his heart pounding as the facts aligned with devastating clarity. The birth certificate, listing Lily's age as 9 years. Emily's name changed shortly after Lily was born. The timing of their breakup 20 years ago, when James had chosen his career ambitions over their relationship. "Are you saying—" James couldn't finish the sentence. "DNA would confirm it," Sarah said gently, "but the timing certainly suggests Lily could be your daughter." James stood abruptly, turning to face the window. The city skyline, his empire, stretched before him, suddenly meaningless. "Where is she now?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "County General Hospital," Sarah replied. "She was brought in unconscious 5 days ago after an accident at a construction site. No ID was found, so she was admitted as a Jane Doe. She was working under the table for Meridian Construction. Meridian is one of my subsidiaries, James said hollowly. Yes, Sarah confirmed. According to witnesses, she was cleaning the site office when a shelf collapsed. Head trauma, internal injuries, she's been unconscious since admission. James gripped the edge of his desk. The timing matched exactly when Lily said her mother had left. Emily, hadn't abandoned her daughter. She'd been lying in a hospital bed, unidentified, while Lily waited faithfully on that park bench. And the construction site belonged to him. Does Lily know? He asked. No. I came straight to you. James nodded mechanically, his mind racing. I need to see Emily. Alone first. At County General, James followed a nurse down a sterile hallway to a room at the end. Inside, lying motionless on the bed, was a woman he hadn't seen in 20 years, yet recognized instantly. Emily's face was thinner, lined with years of struggle, but unmistakably the same woman he'd once loved. Her dark hair, now streaked with premature gray, fanned across the pillow. Various machines monitored her condition, their soft beeping the only sound in the room. She keeps saying Lily and playground when she stirs, the nurse explained, but she hasn't regained full consciousness. James approached the bed slowly, overwhelmed by colliding emotions, shock, guilt, regret, and something deeper he couldn't name. Emily, he whispered, taking her limp hand. It's James. No response. I found Lily, he continued, his voice breaking. She's safe. She's been waiting for you. Still nothing? James sank into the chair beside the bed, still holding Emily's hand. I'm so sorry, he whispered, for everything, for what happened between us, for not being there. The weight of 20 years of choices crashed down on him. He had chosen ambition over love, wealth over connection, power over family, and while he'd built his empire, Emily had raised their daughter alone. Their daughter. The reality of it struck him anew. He had a child. A daughter he'd never known existed. As James left the hospital, a single question consumed him. What would he tell Lily? James sat in his car outside the hospital, his hands trembling on the steering wheel. The image of Emily lying unconscious, so different from the vibrant woman he'd once known, haunted him. He picked up his phone and called Mrs. Alvarez. How is Lily? He asked. She's fine, Mr. Whitaker. We're baking cookies. She's a special child. James swallowed hard. I'll be home soon. Thank you for looking after her. Before driving home, James made another stop at Meridian Construction's main office. He stormed past the receptionist, ignoring her protests, and burst into the site manager's office. Mr. Whitaker, we weren't expecting. The manager, Peterson, jumped to his feet. A woman was injured at your East Side project 5 days ago. James interrupted, his voice dangerously calm. Emma Harper. Peterson paled. Sir, accidents happen in construction. She was working as a cleaner without proper documentation, in a building that clearly violated safety codes. James continued. A building with my name on it. We outsource cleaning to contractors who handle their own staffing, Peterson stammered. We're not responsible for— I am responsible, James cut him off. For all of it. He demanded the full accident report, employment records, and safety inspection history. As he reviewed the documents, another disturbing detail emerged. She applied for a position at our corporate headquarters? James asked, finding Emma's application in the stack. Multiple times over the years, Peterson confirmed nervously. HR rejected her applications. No college degree, spotty work history. James felt physically ill. While he'd been building his fortune, Emily had been trying to reach him through his own company, only to be turned away by layers of corporate bureaucracy he'd established. The drive home was a blur. James's mind raced with all that he'd learned and the decisions that loomed before him. By the time he pulled into his driveway, evening had fallen. He found Lily and Mrs. Alvarez in the kitchen, the air sweet with the scent of chocolate chip cookies. James. Lily's face lit up when she saw him, and the simple joy in her expression made his heart constrict. Those were Emily's eyes looking back at him. How had he not seen it immediately? "Mrs. Alvarez, thank you." "I'll take it from here," James said softly. Once they were alone, James sat Lily down in the living room, Duke settling protectively at her feet. "I found your mom," he began gently. Lily's eyes widened. "Where is she? Can we go see her now?" "She's in the hospital," James explained, choosing his words carefully. "She had an accident at work. That's why she didn't come back to the park." Tears welled in Lily's eyes. "Is she going to be okay?" "The doctors are taking good care of her," James assured her, though the prognosis remained uncertain. "She hit her head and has been sleeping, but we can visit her tomorrow." "She didn't leave. Me on purpose?" Lily asked in a small voice. "No," James said firmly. "She would never leave you on purpose. She loves you very much." Lily nodded, processing this information with remarkable composure for a 9-year-old. "What about the other thing?" James froze. "What other thing?" "The thing that made you look so sad when you came in," Lily said perceptively. "There's something else, isn't there?" James stared at this child, his child amazed by her intuition, but he couldn't tell her everything, not yet. Not until he'd spoken with Emily, if she recovered. Not until he understood himself what it all meant. "Just adult worries," he said finally. "Nothing for you to be concerned about." That night, after Lily had gone to bed, James locked himself in his office and finally allowed his emotions to surface. For the first time in decades, James Whitaker, the ruthless businessman, the cold-hearted magnate, wept, mourning the life he could have had and the years lost forever. The hospital corridor seemed endless as James led Lily toward Emily's room the next morning. He'd prepared her as best he could, explaining the machines, the tubes, the stillness she would see. But Lily's small hand still trembled in his. "She might not wake up right away," James reminded her gently. "But the doctors say she can probably hear us." Lily nodded solemnly. "I'll tell her all about Duke and your big house and the cookies we made." When they entered the room, Lily hesitated only briefly before approaching the bed. James watched, his throat tight, as she carefully took her mother's hand. "Hi, Mom," Lily said, her voice stronger than James expected. "It's me. I waited at the park like you said, and then Mr. Whitaker found me. He has a dog named Duke who really likes me." James stepped back, giving them privacy while remaining close enough to intervene if Lily became overwhelmed. But she surprised him, talking to Emily with a mixture of childlike enthusiasm and startling maturity, describing their days apart as if recounting an adventure rather than a trauma. After the visit, as they walked back to the car, Lily asked the question James had been dreading. "Will Mom be mad that I'm staying with you?" James chose his words carefully. "No, she'll be grateful you're safe. Your mom and I, we knew each other a long time ago." "You did?" Lily looked up at him curiously. "Were you friends?" "Yes," James said, the inadequacy of the word hanging in the air between them. "We were." That afternoon, while Lily napped, exhausted from the emotional hospital visit, James met with the chief of neurology at his downtown office. "I want the best care possible for Emily Hartman," he stated, sliding a check across the desk. "Private, room, specialist, whatever she needs." The doctor eyed the check, a substantial donation to the hospital, and nodded. "Of course, Mr. Whitaker. May I ask your relationship to the patient?" James hesitated. "She's family," he said finally, the truth of it settling into his bones. Later that evening, after putting Lily to bed, James drove back to his office building, needing space to think. The emptiness of his corporate suite at night matched the hollowness he felt inside. On his desk sat the file Sarah Chen had compiled, Emily's work history over the past decade, a string of minimum wage jobs, eviction notices, medical bills marked payment plan, school records showing Lily's frequent transfers as they moved from one affordable apartment to another. Every page told the story of a woman struggling to survive, to provide for her daughter. While he had accumulated wealth beyond reason, The worst revelation had come that afternoon, when James had confronted the construction site foreman directly. The man had reluctantly admitted that safety protocols had been repeatedly ignored to cut costs and meet deadlines. Deadlines James himself had imposed from his corner office, never considering the human cost of his profit margins. James Whitaker had built his empire on being ruthlessly efficient, on squeezing every penny from every project. How many other Emily Hartmans had been casualties of his success? For the first time, James examined his wealth and found it hollow. What good was owning half the city if people like Emily, like Lily, suffered for it? As rain pattered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of his office, James Whitaker, alone with the consequences of 20 years of choices, finally allowed himself to feel the full weight of his responsibility, not just for Emily's accident, but for the life of hardship she'd endured while raising their child alone. He'd chosen ambition over love all those years ago. The cost of that choice was now painfully clear, written in the hospital machines keeping Emily alive and in the solemn eyes of a little girl who'd grown up without a father. James pressed his forehead against the cool glass, watching the city lights blur through his tears. In that moment, he made a silent vow to both Emily and Lily. Whatever happened next, he would make it right. Somehow, he would make it right. "Why don't you have any pictures on your walls?" Lily asked one evening, a week after they'd found Emily. They were in James's home office, Lily drawing at a small table he'd set up for her while he worked. James looked up from his laptop, startled by the question. "I never thought about it," he answered honestly. "Mom keeps all my school pictures even when we have to move a lot," Lily continued, concentrating on her drawing. "She says memories are more important than things." The simple wisdom struck James deeply. His mansion was filled with expensive things, art chosen by decorators, furniture selected for status rather than comfort, but no memories. "Your mother is right," he said quietly. Later that night, James drove Lily to the hospital for their daily visit. Emily's condition remained unchanged, but the doctors had noted increased brain activity when Lily spoke to her. "I made you a new picture," Lily told her mother, carefully placing a colorful drawing on the bedside table. "It's Duke and me and James at the park. When you wake up, you can come live with us. James's house is really big, and he said you can have your own room." James, who had said no such thing, found he didn't mind the presumption. The thought of Emily and Lily leaving once Emily recovered had begun to fill him with quiet dread. As they left the hospital, Lily's small hand slipped naturally into his, a gesture that had become familiar over the past week. In just days, they had developed routines and rituals. Breakfast together before James went to work, now for shortened days, afternoon homework sessions, evening visits to the hospital. "James?" Lily asked as they walked through the parking garage. "Did you ever love someone?" The question caught him off guard. "Why do you ask?" Lily shrugged. "You live all alone in that big house. Don't you get lonely?" James helped her into the car, using the moment to gather his thoughts. "I was focused on building my business," he said finally, settling into the driver's seat. "I didn't make time for that sort of thing." "Mom says everybody needs somebody," Lily stated matter-of-factly. "Even if it's just one person who really sees you." Out of the mouths of babes, James thought, struck once again by Lily's perception. That night, after Lily had gone to bed, James found himself drawn to her backpack, which sat on a chair in the kitchen. The diary he'd glimpsed earlier protruded slightly. He hesitated, knowing he shouldn't invade her privacy, but something compelled him to look. Inside, he found not only Lily's childish stories and drawings, but also several pages in an adult hand. Emily's journal entries interspersed with her daughter's. His eyes caught his own name and he froze. Saw James Whitaker on the business page today. His company just acquired another downtown building. I wonder if he ever thinks about what might have been. If he knew about Lily, would it matter to him now? Sometimes I see him in her, the determined, set of her jaw, the way her mind works with numbers. I never told her about him. What would be the point? He made his choice long ago. James closed the diary, his hands trembling. Emily had recognized their daughter's resemblance to him, had seen him in Lily's mannerisms and talents. Yet she'd never reached out, never told him he had a child. He should feel angry at being denied knowledge of his daughter for 9 years. Instead, he felt only profound sadness and understanding. The James Whitaker that Emily had known, that he himself had been until recently, would not have welcomed a child disrupting his ambitions. Would he have even believed her? Or would he have accused her of trying to extract money from him, hired lawyers to keep her at bay? The realization was painful but honest. Emily had made the best choice she could with the man he had been. The question now was, what kind of man would he choose to be going forward? 2 weeks had passed since James found Lily in the park. 2 weeks that had transformed his carefully ordered life into something unrecognizable and unexpectedly meaningful. Each morning now began with Lily's chatter over breakfast. Each evening ended with their hospital visits, where they would talk to the still unconscious Emily about their day. James had rearranged his entire schedule, delegating responsibilities. He'd never trusted to anyone before, leaving the office by 4 o'clock to pick Lily up from the private tutor he'd arranged. The corporate titan who once regularly worked 16-hour days now spent his evenings helping a 9-year-old with fractions and reading her bedtime stories. Mr. Whitaker? Dr. Patel, Emily's neurologist, approached as James sat in the hospital corridor while Lily had her private time with her mother. May I speak with you? James stood, instantly alert. Has something changed? We're seeing encouraging signs, Dr. Patel explained. Increased responsiveness, especially during your visits. Ms. Hartman seems particularly reactive to the child's voice. That's good news, James said cautiously. It is, but I'm concerned about the duration of her unconscious state. I'd like to bring in a specialist from Boston, Dr. Eleanor Chen. She's pioneering some innovative approaches to traumatic brain injuries. Do it, James said without hesitation. Whatever it costs. Dr. Patel nodded. There's something else. We've been monitoring brain activity during visits. There was a notable spike yesterday when you were reading to Ms. Hartman. James had taken to reading aloud during their visits, remembering how Emily had loved poetry in college. Yesterday, he'd read from Elizabeth Barrett Browning, one of her favorites. What does that mean? He asked. It suggests she's processing your voice, perhaps even the content. It might help to continue that, speaking about meaningful shared memories. When Lily emerged from the room, James sent her to the cafeteria with Mrs. Alvarez, who now accompanied them on hospital visits. Alone with Emily, he pulled his chair close to her bed. The doctors think you can hear me, he said softly, taking her hand. I hope that's true because there's so much I need to say to you. He paused, struggling to organize his thoughts. I know about Lily, that I'm her father. His voice broke slightly. She's extraordinary, Emily. You've done an amazing job raising her despite everything, despite me. James found himself telling Emily everything. His regrets about their past, his shame at what his company had become, his growing love for their daughter. Words flowed from him, unfiltered and raw in a way he'd never allowed himself to be. Don't expect forgiveness, he concluded, but I want you to know that I'm going to take care of both of you now, if you'll let me. As he stood to leave, he felt the slightest pressure against his fingers. Looking down, he saw Emily's hand twitching in his. Emily, he whispered. Her eyelids fluttered but didn't open. James pressed the call button frantically. Within moments, Dr. Patel and a team of nurses rushed in. For the next 3 days, James barely left the hospital as Emily showed increasing signs of consciousness. Dr. Chen arrived from Boston and implemented a new treatment protocol. Lily, sensing the change, became both excited and anxious, asking endless questions that James did his best to answer honestly. Will Mom remember me? She asked on the 3rd night, as James tucked her into bed in a hospital suite he'd arranged near Emily's room. Of course she will, James assured her, though the doctors had warned that memory issues were possible. You're unforgettable. Lily regarded him seriously. Will she be mad that I've been staying with you? James hesitated. He still hadn't told Lily about her parentage, feeling that Emily should be part of that conversation. Your mother wants what's best for you. She'll be happy you were safe. The breakthrough came on a quiet Tuesday morning. James had brought Lily's diary to the hospital and was reading Emily's entries aloud, hoping they might reach her in a way his words couldn't. Today, Lily lost her first tooth, he read. She was so proud, marching around showing everyone at the laundromat. We couldn't afford the tooth fairy, but I left a note saying her smile was so beautiful that the tooth fairy left it as a gift, for me instead. She believed it completely. James? The whispered word was so faint he almost missed it. James looked up from the diary to find Emily's eyes open, confused but unmistakably conscious. Emily, he breathed, hardly daring to believe it. You're awake. Her gaze darted around the room. Lily? She asked, her voice raspy from disuse. She's safe. She's here, just down the hall, James assured her quickly, pressing the call button. I found her in the park waiting for you. Emily's expression clouded with confusion, then dawning realization. The accident. How long? Almost 3 weeks, James answered gently. You've been unconscious. Tears filled her eyes. Lily was alone. For 3 weeks? No, James said firmly, taking her hand. She's been with me at my house. I've been taking care of her. Emily's eyes widened as full recognition set in. James Whitaker? Before he could respond, the medical team rushed in, forcing James to step back as they examined Emily. He used the moment to text Mrs. Alvarez, asking her to bring Lily immediately. 20 minutes later, as the doctors finished their initial assessment, Lily burst into the room, stopping short at the sight of her mother awake and sitting up slightly, against the pillows. Mom, she whispered, as if afraid speaking too loudly might break the spell. Lily! Emily's voice trembled, her arms opening. Lily flew across the room and into her mother's embrace. James stepped back, giving them privacy for their reunion, his own eyes wet as he watched Lily sob against Emily's shoulder. Later, after Lily had fallen asleep curled against her mother's side. Emily's eyes met James's over their daughter's head. How did you find her? Emily asked quietly. Pure chance, James admitted. I was walking my dog in the park. She was sleeping on a bench. Emily closed her eyes briefly, pain crossing her features. I told her to wait by the playground. I'd be right back. I was going to pick up my paycheck and look at an apartment. Her voice broke. I never meant to leave her. I know, James said gently. It wasn't your fault. Emily studied him, taking in the changes 20 years had wrought. You know, don't you? About Lily? James nodded. I hired a private investigator to find you. She uncovered your name change, the timing of everything. He hesitated. Why didn't you tell me, Emily? Emily's gaze dropped to their sleeping daughter. Would it have mattered? She asked softly. You made it very clear what your priorities were when you left. The simple truth of her words stung, but James couldn't deny them. I was wrong, he said simply, about everything that mattered. A complexity of emotions crossed Emily's face. Pain, doubt, and something else James couldn't quite identify. Before either could speak again, a nurse entered to check Emily's vital signs, ending their conversation just as it had begun to breach the gulf of 20 years. The doctors insisted on keeping Emily for observation despite her remarkable recovery. In the days that followed, a cautious routine developed. James would bring Lily to the hospital after school, then step away to give mother and daughter time together. Later, when Lily was occupied with homework or the games James had brought, he and Emily would talk, carefully navigating 20 years of absence. You've been taking care of Lily all this time? Emily asked on the third day after waking, when they finally had a moment alone. James nodded. She's an amazing child, Emily. You've done an incredible job raising her. Alone, Emily added, watching his reaction. On minimum wage with no support. James flinched but met her gaze steadily. I didn't know about her. Would it have mattered? Emily's question wasn't accusatory but genuinely curious. The James I knew was laser-focused on building his empire. There wasn't room for anything else, certainly not a baby. I was different then, James admitted. Ambitious, selfish. I told myself I was building something important, but the truth is I was just running away from real connection. He hesitated. Why did you change your name? Emily sighed, adjusting her position against the pillows. After you left for New York, I found out I was pregnant. I tried to contact you, called your new office, sent letters. Your assistant said you were too busy to speak with me and returned the letters unopened. James closed his eyes, remembering his instructions to his first assistant. Screen all personal contacts, focus only on business. He'd been so determined to reinvent himself, to shed his modest origins and become someone important. When I realized you weren't going to respond, Emily continued, I had to make decisions. My parents had just died, I had no family support, and I was pregnant with the child of a man who'd made it clear I wasn't part of his future. So you changed your name, James supplied, the weight of her isolation settling on him. Emily nodded. Fresh start. I moved upstate, had Lily, worked whatever jobs I could find. It was hard, but we managed. Until recently, James said gently. Emily's eyes filled with tears. The economy, housing costs, everything got harder. We lost our apartment, couldn't find another we could afford. I was working 3 jobs and still falling behind. She looked away. I never wanted Lily to know how bad things were. I tried to make it seem like an adventure. She never doubted you, James assured her. Not for a moment. A nurse interrupted them, bringing Emily's medication. When they were alone again, James gathered his courage for the question that had been haunting him. Did you ever plan to tell me about Lily? Emily was quiet for a long time. I considered it as she got older, she finally admitted. She started asking about her father. I told her he was a brilliant man who had important work to do. Not that I'd abandoned you, James noted. You didn't know about her, Emily said simply. I couldn't bring myself to tell her that her father had chosen success over love. That seemed cruel. But I couldn't lie and say you died either. She glanced toward the doorway where Lily was visible talking to a nurse. As she got older, I started thinking she deserved to know you. I applied for jobs at your company several times, thinking if I could just get in the door. You were trying to reach me, James realized, remembering the job applications Peterson had shown him. Emily nodded, but when I couldn't get past HR, I took it as a sign. Maybe it was better for Lily not to know a father who might reject her. The painful honesty hung between them. Decades of unspoken truths finally aired. I wouldn't have rejected her, James, said quietly. Not her. The man you are now, perhaps not, Emily acknowledged. But the man you were then? James couldn't answer with certainty. The ambitious young man he'd been, so determined to prove himself, might well have seen a child as an obstacle or responsibility to be managed rather than embraced. I want to be in her life now, he said instead. In both your lives, if you'll let me. Before Emily could respond, Lily bounded back into the room, a drawing clutched in her hand. Look what I made. It's all of us at James's house when you get better. Emily studied the crayon figures, Lily in the middle, holding hands, with both adults. It's beautiful, sweetheart. When can we tell her? James asked quietly later after Lily had fallen asleep in the recliner. Emily watched their daughter's peaceful face. Soon, she promised. When I'm out of here. We'll tell her together. As James left the hospital that night, he realized something had shifted between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but perhaps the beginning of understanding. The past couldn't be changed, but for Lily's sake and perhaps their own, they might find a way forward together. Mr. Whitaker, there's a situation that requires your attention. Rebecca's voice over the intercom interrupted James's morning meeting. I'm in the middle of something, he replied, glancing at the executives around his conference table. Sir, it's on the front page of the Business Journal. 10 minutes later, James stared at the headline. Real estate mogul discovers long-lost daughter. Below was a photo of him and Lily leaving the hospital. How did they get this? James demanded. Rebecca shrugged helplessly. Someone at the hospital, maybe? It quotes sources close to the family, saying you've discovered you have a 9-year-old daughter with a former girlfriend who was recently injured at one of your construction sites. James grabbed his coat. Cancel everything. I need to get to the hospital before Emily sees this. He was too late. When he arrived, Emily was sitting up in bed, the newspaper in her lap, her expression unreadable. I was going to tell you, James began. I've been trying to keep the press away, but it's fine, Emily said quietly. I knew this would happen eventually. You're too high profile for it to stay secret. Where's Lily? James asked, glancing around. With the child life specialist. They're doing art therapy. Emily folded the newspaper. We need to tell her today, James, before she hears it from someone else. That afternoon, they sat together on Emily's hospital bed, Lily between them, puzzled by their serious expressions. Sweetheart, Emily began gently. Remember how you've asked about your father before? Lily nodded, her eyes darting between them. The truth is, Emily continued, choosing her words carefully, James and I knew each other a long time ago, before you were born. Lily's brow furrowed. You were friends like you said, right? More than friends, James explained softly. We cared about each other very much. Understanding dawned in Lily's eyes. Are you my dad? She asked directly, looking up at James. James nodded, emotion tightening his throat. Yes, Lily, I am. But, you didn't know about me until now? Lily asked. That's right, Emily confirmed. It's complicated, sweetie. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes and don't communicate well. Lily processed this, her expression thoughtful. That's why Duke liked me right away, she concluded with a child's logic. He knew we were family. James laughed softly, relieved by her response. Maybe he did. I knew there was something, Lily said, looking between them. You both get the same wrinkle right here when you're thinking. She touched the space between her own eyebrows. Emily reached over to squeeze James's hand, a silent acknowledgement of their daughter's perception. As the news broke publicly, James faced the media directly, issuing a statement confirming that he had recently discovered he had a daughter and requesting privacy as they navigated this new family dynamic. Rather than hiding, he used his platform to announce the establishment of the Harper Foundation, dedicated to supporting single parents in crisis. At Emily's discharge, photographers crowded the hospital entrance. James arranged a private exit, bringing them back to his mansion where Emily settled into a guest suite to continue her recovery. The first days were awkward, Emily uncomfortable with the luxury, James uncertain how to share his space, Lily bouncing between them, delighted to have both parents under one roof. This place is like a museum, Emily remarked one evening after Lily had gone to bed. Everything perfect but nothing personal. James looked around his immaculate living room with new eyes. It never bothered me before. That's because you weren't really living here, Emily observed. You were just staying here. The next day, James came home to find the refrigerator door covered with Lily's artwork, held up by colorful magnets. A family photo Emily had taken of the three of them at the hospital sat framed on the mantel. Small changes, but somehow they transformed the sterile mansion into something warmer, something that felt for the first time like a home. When James's mother arrived unannounced from Arizona, critical and suspicious of the new arrangement, James surprised himself by standing firm. This is my family, Mother, he said quietly but firmly. I've missed 9 years of Lily's life. I won't miss any more. I appreciate everything you've done, James, but we can't stay here forever. Emily stood in James's home office, her posture conveying a determination he remembered well from their college days. 6 weeks had passed since Emily's discharge from the hospital. Her physical recovery had progressed remarkably, though she still tired easily. During that time, the three of them had fallen into a tentative routine that felt increasingly natural. Breakfasts together before James left for work, dinners where Lily chattered about school, Weekend outings carefully planned to avoid the paparazzi who still occasionally lurked outside the gates. Why not? James asked, leaning back in his chair. There's more than enough room. Emily sighed. That's not the point. I need my independence back. I need to work, to support myself and Lily. You don't have to work, James pointed out. The trust fund I set up for Lily covers everything she needs, and I'm happy to. That's exactly what I'm talking about, Emily interrupted. I've taken care of my daughter, our daughter, on my own for 9 years. I can't just hand over that responsibility and become… What? Your dependent? James stood, frustration rising. Is your pride really worth disrupting Lily's life again? She's settled here. She loves her new school. Duke would be heartbroken. Emily's eyes flashed. Don't use our daughter as emotional leverage. This isn't about pride. It's about teaching Lily the values I believe in. Self-reliance. Working for what you have. And what about teaching her about family? About parents who make it work together? James countered. Make what work exactly? Emily asked quietly. What exactly are we to each other, James? The question hung between them unanswered. In the weeks of cohabitation, they had focused entirely on Lily, carefully avoiding any discussion of their own relationship. They were cordial, occasionally even warm, united in their love for their daughter, but separated by 20 years of different lives and lingering ghosts from their past. I've found an apartment, Emily continued, when James didn't respond. It's in Oak Ridge, close enough that Lily can stay in her school. 2 bedrooms, affordable. Oak Ridge, that area is… James began. Not up to your standards? Emily finished sharply. I was going to say far from your doctor's, James replied evenly. Emily looked away, some of her defensiveness fading. I need to stand on my own feet again, James. Surely you can understand that. Before James could respond, they heard the front door slam and Lily's voice calling out. Their argument would have to wait. That evening, while helping Lily with homework, James found himself distracted, turning over Emily's words in his mind. Had he been trying to control everything, just as he did in business? Was his insistence that they stay merely another expression of his need to manage every situation? Dad? Lily's voice pulled him back. You're not listening. I'm sorry, sweetheart. The term dad still gave him a warm jolt. Lily had adopted it naturally after learning the truth, as if making up for lost time. Are you and Mom fighting? Lily asked directly. James sighed. Lily missed nothing. We're having a disagreement, he admitted. Adults do that sometimes. About us moving out, Lily stated, not asking. James nodded, surprised, but not shocked that she knew. Your mom wants her own place. And you want us to stay, Lily concluded. I heard you talking. The walls here are pretty thin, you know. I thought the walls in this place were solid concrete, James said, attempting humor. Not when you both get loud, Lily replied seriously. Mom doesn't like feeling like she owes you. She's always been like that. James studied his daughter. And what do you think? Lily considered this. I like it here. I like having both of you. But Mom's been sad lately, even though she tries to hide it. Later that night, after Lily had gone to bed, James found Emily on the terrace, wrapped in a blanket against the autumn chill. Lily knows we're arguing, he said, sitting beside her. Emily nodded. She would. She's always been attuned to emotional undercurrents. Comes from years of having to read how much money was left by my expression when I checked the bank account. The frank assessment hit James hard. I've been thinking about what you said, he offered, about needing your independence. And, Emily prompted, I understand. I don't like it, but I understand. He paused. But I'd like to counter-propose. What about the guest house? It's separate, has its own entrance. You could have your space, but still be close, for Lily's sake. Emily considered this. And what? About us, James? We've been playing house for Lily's benefit, but we've barely talked about what happened between us all those years ago. I thought we had, James said carefully. I was ambitious and selfish. I chose career over everything else. That's what happened, Emily agreed. But we haven't talked about how it felt, how it still feels. She turned to face him fully. Do you know what it did to me when you left? When you cut off all contact? When I found out I was pregnant and couldn't reach you? The pain in her voice broke something open in James. Tell me, he said softly. I need to hear it. Their conversation lasted well into the night, painful truths emerging that had been buried for decades. Emily's sense of abandonment, James's fear of the vulnerability that love required, the defensive walls both had built in the aftermath of their breakup. When tears came, from both of them, they were cleansing rather than bitter. As dawn approached, they had reached no firm resolution about living arrangements, but something had shifted between them. A clearing of old debris, making space for something new to possibly grow. The decision was ultimately made for them the next day when Lily, having heard enough of their debate, took matters into her own hands. At dinner, she presented a carefully drawn family contract, stipulating that Emily and she would move into the guest house on a trial basis, with clearly defined spaces and roles for everyone. Looking at their daughter's earnest face, neither parent had the heart to refuse her compromise. She's going to be a formidable negotiator someday, James remarked later, as they reviewed Lily's surprisingly thorough document. Wonder where she gets that, Emily replied with the first genuine smile he'd seen from her in days. Snow dusted the city on the first day of December, transforming the stark urban landscape into something softer, more forgiving. James stood at his office window, watching the flakes drift past, his mind not on the quarterly reports awaiting his review, but on the evening ahead, Lily's holiday concert at her new school. His phone buzzed with a text from Emily. Lily forgot her costume. Could you pick it up from the house on your way to the school? James smiled at the domesticity of the request. In the 6 weeks since Emily and Lily had moved into the guest house, they'd settled into an unexpected rhythm. Separate living spaces but shared meals, independent days but evenings together helping Lily with homework or watching movies. The arrangement had eased the tensions between James and Emily, allowing them space to navigate their complex relationship at their own pace. Of course, he texted back. Anything else needed? Emily replied with a grocery list, adding, only if you have time. No pressure. That was new too. Emily slowly growing comfortable asking for help, accepting that James wanted to be involved in the mundane aspects of family life, not just the grand gestures. James left the office early, something that no longer raised eyebrows among his staff. The transformation in their boss had been the subject of much speculation. The notorious workaholic now left at reasonable hours, rescheduled meetings around school events, and spoke of his daughter with undisguised pride. At the elementary school auditorium, James arrived carrying Lily's angel costume and a bouquet of flowers, scanning the crowd for Emily. He spotted her saving seats near the front, looking healthier than she had in months, her cheeks flushed with color. You made it, she said as he sat beside her, relief evident in her voice. Wouldn't miss it, James assured her. Though I got caught in traffic, did I miss anything? Just the kindergartner's song about snowflakes, very adorable, very off-key. They shared a smile, their shoulders brushing comfortably. These small moments of connection had been increasing. A shared look over Lily's head when she said something precocious, their hands accidentally touching while doing dishes. Conversations that stretched late into the night after Lily was asleep. When Lily's class took the stage, James felt an unexpected lump in his throat. His daughter stood in the second row, her angel wings slightly crooked, her face solemn with concentration as she performed the choreographed movements. Emily reached for his hand without looking, squeezing it as if she knew exactly what he was feeling. She's incredible, James whispered. She is, Emily agreed softly. After the performance, as Lily accepted their praise with a mixture of embarrassment and pride, James noticed her teacher approaching. Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Harper, the woman greeted them. Lily did wonderfully tonight. Thank her. You, Emily replied warmly. She practiced those songs constantly. I wanted to personally invite you both to our classroom holiday party next week, the teacher continued. Lily mentioned you might be able to help, Mr. Whitaker. James looked down at his daughter questioningly. I told her you'd help with the decorations, Lily explained. Since you're good at building things. James felt a rush of pleasure at being needed for something so ordinary. I'd be happy to, he confirmed. After saying goodbye to the teacher, James turned to his family. I have something I'd like to show you both before we go home, he said. A surprise. What kind of surprise? Lily asked, her concert fatigue instantly forgotten. You'll see. James drove them to the east side of the city, an area of mixed development, where one of his company's newest projects was under construction. As they pulled up to the fenced site, Emily frowned in confusion. Why are we at a construction site at night? James parked and led them to a viewing platform he'd had installed. Floodlights illuminated the partially completed complex. This is my newest project, he explained. Or rather, Whitaker Development's newest project. Lily pressed her face against the safety glass. It's big. What's it going to be? It's a community development, James said, watching Emily's reaction carefully. Mixed-income housing, a daycare center, after-school facilities, and job training programs. Emily turned to him, surprise evident on her face. This isn't your usual luxury condo development. No, James agreed. It's something new for us. He hesitated. The community center will be named after Lily. Really? Lily bounced excitedly. I get a building? A portion of a building, James corrected with a smile. But an important portion. Emily studied the site, then looked back at James, with new understanding. This is why you've been working late on Thursdays, not a business dinner. James nodded. I've been meeting with community organizations, getting their input on what's actually needed here. He took a deep breath. And I've set up scholarships for the children of all my employees, prioritizing maintenance and construction staff. The changes went beyond this one project. Since finding Lily and reconnecting with Emily, James had begun examining his business practices through a new lens. The ruthless efficiency that had built his fortune suddenly seemed hollow when he considered the human cost. He'd implemented living wages across all his properties, established safety protocols that exceeded industry standards, and begun investing in affordable housing initiatives. Why didn't you tell me about this? Emily asked softly. James shrugged, suddenly self-conscious. I wanted to show you rather than tell you. Actions matter more than words. On the drive home, Lily fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted from her performance. At a stoplight, Emily reached across the console to touch James's arm. Thank you, she said simply. For what? For changing. For trying. For not just throwing money at problems, but actually thinking about solutions. As they approached the driveway of what was increasingly feeling like their shared home, Emily added, Would you like to come over for coffee after we put Lily to bed? Just to talk. James caught the significance in her invitation. The guest house had been her sanctuary, a space he entered only when explicitly invited. I'd like that very much, he replied. Later, sitting in the small but cozy living room of the guest house, cradling mugs of coffee as snow continued to fall outside, James and Emily found themselves discussing Christmas plans, their conversation filled with a tentative hope neither had allowed themselves to feel in decades. 1 year later, the bench where James had first found Lily sat empty in the snow-dusted park. The old wooden slats had been replaced with new ones, a small plaque affixed to the back. Where lost souls find their way home. James walked the familiar path with Duke, now slightly grayer but still dignified, while Lily ran ahead, her red winter coat bright against the white landscape. Emily walked beside him, her gloved hand comfortably entwined with his. Hard to believe it's been a year, Emily said, her breath clouding in the December air. James nodded, squeezing her hand. Sometimes it feels like just yesterday. Other times, like you've both always been part of my life. They reached the bench and sat down, watching Lily attempt to teach Duke to catch snowflakes. The past year had brought changes none of them could have imagined on that fateful night. The guest house arrangement had gradually evolved, with Emily and Lily spending more nights in the main house until the separation between their living spaces became a formality rather than a reality. James's company had transformed too. Whitaker Development was now known not just for luxury properties but for its community-focused initiatives and ethical business practices. The day James had fired Peterson and several other executives for continuing to cut corners on worker safety had made headlines, but the message was clear. The old way of doing business was over. Emily now ran the Harper Foundation, which provided emergency assistance to families in crisis. Her personal experience made her uniquely qualified to understand what families truly needed in their most vulnerable moments. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I hadn't been walking Duke that night?" James asked, watching their daughter's carefree play. Emily considered this. "I probably would have lost custody of Lily when they found me in the hospital. You might never have known about her." She turned to face him. "But I like to think we would have found our way to each other eventually." "How so?" "I believe some connections are meant to be, even if the path getting there isn't straight," Emily replied. "We needed to become different people before we could be right for each other again." James reached into his pocket, feeling the small, velvet box he'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. This bench, where everything had begun, suddenly seemed exactly right. "Emily," he began, shifting to face her fully. "When I found Lily here, I thought I was rescuing a lost child. I didn't realize I was the one being saved." Emily's eyes widened as he withdrew the box and opened it, revealing a simple but elegant diamond ring. "I'm not asking because of Lily, or because it's the proper thing to do," James continued. "I'm asking because this year has shown me what I was missing all those years of pursuing wealth and power. Real connection, love, family." He took a deep breath. "Will you marry me? Not for convenience, not for appearance, but because I love you, both the girl I knew in college and the strong woman you've become." Emily's eyes filled with tears that caught the winter sunlight. "Are you sure? Your life was so orderly before we crashed into it." "Orderly and empty," James replied. "I don't want order if it means living without you both." "Yes," Emily whispered. "Yes, I'll marry you." As James slipped the ring onto her finger, Lily came running back, Duke bounding beside her. "Did you ask her?" she demanded, her cheeks flushed with cold and excitement. "Did she say yes?" James laughed. "You knew, Dad?" Lily rolled her eyes in exaggerated patience. "You asked me for permission last week, remember? Plus, you're not very sneaky about hiding jewelry boxes." As they walked home together through the gently falling snow, James reflected on the transformative journey of the past year. The man he had been, isolated in his wealth, devoid of genuine connection, was gone, replaced by someone who understood that true wealth couldn't be measured in property holdings or bank balances. It was here, with his daughter's mitten-covered hand in his right hand and his fiancée's grasp in his left, that James Whitaker finally found what his success had never been able to provide: a sense of belonging, purpose, and unshakable joy. The park around them was now part of a revitalized community space, with a playground and family shelter constructed by Whitaker Development. Where there had once been only a lonely bench in the darkness, there was now light, laughter, and the promise of new beginnings for many families beyond their own. The circle was complete.